Okay, for the second part that I want you guys to do this week for week 2, is I made a drag and drop assignment for you in Google Slides, and I'm going to show you how it works. So in a minute here, I'm going to start a lecture, and as you listen, you can drag these words into the right category. So for example, you have bacteria here, and you can drag it and drop it here or here. And in the end, all of these words should be in the correct part in the table. And then you just upload it back to me and you're done for this assignment. So I'm going to go back to the first slide here. You can see this is kind of small. So in Google Slides, you can zoom in. And so I'm going to zoom in a little bit, make it a little bigger so you guys can see it better. And you can always do that to adjust it for your computer. Okay. So, you learned about the tree of life in the first part of this week's lectures, and the 3 domains, the bacteria, the archaea, and the eukaryotes. You also learned that evolution is one of the characteristics of life, and we can see this really nicely in the tree, with the use of universal ancestor cell, and that changed or evolved into the bacteria, and then over time also changed more and changed into what we recognize today as the archaea and the eukaryotes. And again, the eukaryotes include plants, animals, fungi, protists, and which are single-celled eukaryotes. So there are a bunch of diversity patterns, and we're going to talk a little bit more about it next week. But one of the really big ones is prokaryotes versus eukaryotes. So on the table you can see here the prokaryotes are very similar in cell structure, and this type of cell includes the bacteria and the archaea. Then there's another cell type that is shared by all eukaryotes, so by the plants, animals, fungi, and protists. So let's learn a little bit about the differences between the prokaryotic cell type and the eukaryotic cell type. So prokaryotes tend to be extremely small cells. They're so small that you absolutely need a microscope to see them, and real good magnification. You'll get to see some in lab, for sure. But for today, just know that they're extremely small. Eukaryotic cells are a lot bigger, and they include, they're a lot bigger, and that's why you can see the plants and animals and fungi and even protists. You can see them with the naked eye, so it's just easier with a bigger cell to build a bigger organism. Okay. Another really big difference between prokaryotes and eukaryotes is that in prokaryotes, DNA is not enclosed in a membrane, so there's no nucleus. In eukaryotic cells, you definitely have the DNA enclosed in the nucleus, and so there's this membrane that protects the DNA, and we call that the nucleus. Another really big difference when it comes to the DNA is that in prokaryotes, the DNA is in a single loop. And in eukaryotes, the DNA is in linear strands that we call chromosomes. And so for example, we have 46 chromosomes, 23 pairs, and they're all in these long, linear, meaning straight strands. Okay. Another difference between these guys is that in prokaryotes, you don't have organelles. Organelles are cell structures that have a specific function. So basically, all the metabolic machinery in bacteria and archaea is embedded in the cell membrane, and there are no organelles. Eukaryotes are very different because they have many organelles. So no organelles, many organelles. And then one last difference between them is that the bacteria and archaea are always single-celled, meaning that one cell is the entire organism, where in eukaryotes you can be single-celled, so protists are single-celled eukaryotes, but you can also be colonial, and you're going to learn about that next week, as well as multicellular. So plants and animals and most fungi are multicellular, meaning you're made up of at least 2 cells, if not more cells. Okay, so those are the main differences between prokaryotes and eukaryotes. And at this point, if you don't have your table sorted yet, you might want to listen to it again. It's only 5 minutes, And then when you're done, just shoot that assignment back to me. Alrighty, bye.